Barren, empty, desolate, arid, sterile, infertile, unproductive, depleted, unfruitful, bony, leafless, withered, vacant, hollow, blank, devoid, unfilled, unoccupied, cleared, purged, drained, bleak, forsaken, abandoned, ruined, deserted, lonely, solitary, uninhabited, God-forsaken, soulless, lifeless, hollow-hearted, void, meaningless, pathetic, now. These are all adjectives which describe very human states. States of existence which those who feel stuck within the deepest pits of bottomless magnitude experience. Pits out of hell which you can't and won't rise out of. The uneventful and unmoving day that refuses to let go of your soul as you hang on to your positive emotions with whatever deep, caressing tightness you can, holding them in a hug from which you don't want to let go. You don't want to release. You don't want to become one with the things that fade from you. We hold on to dear things and hug them and bear the amount of emotions we feel towards our work, our people, ourselves, as we craft our own consumerist nightmares. And eventually we feel so attached to the objects we hold so dear, the ones we use in everyday life, that we feel rather than human closeness, a dependency which turns to hatred and then love. Over and over again, we feel like our skin particles have been fused to the symbol object which moments ago which momentarily aids us. Barren, empty, desolate, arid, sterile, infertile, unproductive, depleted, unfruitful, bony, leafless, withered, vacant, hollow, blank, devoid, unfilled, unoccupied, cleared, purged, drained, bleak, forsaken, abandoned, ruined, deserted, lonely, solitary, uninhabited, God-forsaken, soulless, lifeless, hollow-hearted, void, meaningless, all pathetic, now. Adjectives which describe the singular and all-powerful experiences which are portrayed within Mike Klubnika's and Rick's game Fused240. A short but extremely dense and terrifying outlook into society's broken down remnants. Generally, I don't think I need to introduce Mike Klubnika, since he's the creator of one of the biggest indie games in the past recollective memory, Buckshot Roulette. Rix is another developer who worked on this, and has his game on the way. I think he influenced heavily some themes of the game, though I can't pinpoint which sensibilities are of his and which are of Mike. Regardless of how much they've each worked on this, they've created a piece which speaks 1,000 words. Something which to me feels like deeply insightful commentary on the state of a lot of things. I think the game's introduction is equally terrifying as it is serene. The game opens up with a warm embrace reminiscent of all late summer nights, of time spent in the grass and rain, of wishing for the crickets to sing again as you drive your car endlessly on the stretching highways. The softest, gentle rustling of the wind. It's a cozy garage. Things stay scattered around, reminding us of those moments I've been talking about, those pieces of our past we wish we could relive. A calendar states the date is May 2004. The music, it was so beautiful, it evoked a sense of unparalleled nostalgia upon me, and I cried sitting here at my desk watching the title screen. I cried looking at this low-poly depiction of what childhood felt to me. Yet I never experienced the interior of such a garage. Or maybe I did. These feelings felt implanted into me, spoon-fed by some demon which wanted me to waste tears, to cry and long for more. I don't think anything realistically could have ever made me feel like I did back then, but the memory of someone who knew what it felt like. I reluctantly clicked on the start button. Hitting space threw me into a highway at night, watching a man drive. I'm free as the wind, he says, happy that he can finally go home. But that thought doesn't stay long, as he gets engulfed by a bright light ahead of him on the road. In a visceral moment, our protagonist gets crushed under the weight of the enormous metal sheets, in an instant turning him to mush, as the text on screen simply says, "There's an overwhelming taste of iron. Your limbs feel numb." A scene opens widely on a sparse commercial ground, in the ruins of an assumed society. We've become simply a small cube with wheels, stuck forever in the remnants of our broken car. What once was an item of convenience and movement, the car, he held in high regards, that which granted him speed and the ability to claim that he was as free as the wind, becomes the vessel which ties him down, fused together in a dance that feels equally terrifying. The mound of emotions I was talking about earlier, now physically and metaphorically stuck to his skin, the object that resounded and helped now fused. What remains is without much soul or reason. He wanders a wasteland forward in the search of food. The date on a small camera shows that it's now 2011. 7 long years have passed. Years of eternal suffering and barren, empty, desolate feelings. This desolation is reflective of a culture and societal decay caused by the collapse of established structures, which has left individuals grappling with the fundamental struggle for survival. The broken car and the barren environments are shards representing dehumanization in its purest form, where advanced civilization has crumbled into a state that prioritizes basic needs over higher aspirations. The movement of the character also. Using a little arm he has in front, he slowly and sluggishly drags himself along the ground. The controls feel terrible as the player is forced to continuously mash the F and N keys in a rhythmic and annoying manner that feels irritating to the fingers. It feels torturous, like barely moving this vessel which doesn't want to exist on this earth no more along a path. It's so slow too. The physical irritation in my fingers as I struggled to move forward felt frustrating. So frustrating, so arid, sterile, infertile, unproductive. My fingers felt like they had become a metaphor for the weariness of routine and the frustration of fighting against an inevitable mechanical presence, one which refused to live, one which persisted and forced itself, almost holding hostage the idea of life. A small little thing which clearly was part of the design, as it formed and embodied the idea of being trapped in a Sisyphean cycle, forever stuck, rocking back and forth for every single moment of life. How tragic must it feel? In transit, in pain, it feels so depleted, unfruitful, bony, leafless, withered. As the character wonders about the state of the world, the birds migrating and laments and basks in their hatred of the damsels, the flies. The Damselflies. I'm reminded of a powerful yet simply monumental poem by August Kleinzoller, The Damselfly. A poem which to me represents this world stuck in stillness, a nostalgic yet beautiful reminder of past times. It unfortunately connects directly with the beginning of the game. I felt nostalgic at the start. I felt corrupted by a sentiment like none other than vacant, hollow, blank nostalgia. One which will forever linger in an air of expectation. I think the presence of this bug simply instills the same kind of nostalgic break-off, and the poem explains it beautifully. A petal of jasmine caught up by the breeze, or morning glory aflutter, between the 4 o'clock and the naked lady? No, not a flower at all, a butterfly, showing suddenly white against the green of a leaf. That blue there, cobalt. A moment, then iridescent, fragile as a lady's pin hovering above the nasturtium. Ah, the older poet tells me, that's a damselfly. And if you just slowed down and looked, you'd see all sorts of things. Mid-morning toward the end of summer, head swimming in the garden's perfume after a quick surprise rain. It's but a reflection of the same kinds of feelings, of reminiscence that make us think about good times, about bad times, about the past, and make us pray to not live in this devoid, unfilled, unoccupied wasteland of hatred and past burned. Our character mentions how entire shipping containers are gone, nowhere to be found, but he knows where to find more. We walk toward the end of a railroad as we see shipment containers passing by. Who operates them any longer? In this hostile and dissociated realm, why do the trains keep going? Are they doing it autonomously? Is someone keeping the deliveries going? We head inside the facility as our character says. At least they never go inside. The phrase to me carries a bitter irony, as it either suggests that nobody goes inside or the food gets to nobody but this person. The heart of human activity and compassion has long been abandoned. How terrible. Yet he remains confident that more can be found, hinting at a fragile hope that the remnants of an organized past might still be reclaimed. These fragments of society feel like those not only ravaged by war, but akin to those oftentimes presented in nuclear war stories. Those of people without limbs, of those disfigured by the use of nuclear weapons. I'm honestly reminded in a very powerful way about the story which unfolds in a quite popular manga series that tackles the idea of a world in the ruin of nuclear warfare. I'm talking about none other than Barefoot Gen. This series is best known for its disturbing OVA scene, but I'm going to choose to focus on the manga as I think that follows more the scope of this video. The manga, in my opinion, is more cleared, purged, drained. The manga opens with the line, "The trampled wheat sends strong roots into the earth, endures frost, wind and snow, grows straight and tall and one day bears fruit." It's somewhat foreboding about the state of existence that this is the way we meet our main character again. Him and his brother Shinji are being taught by their father how to trample wheat, in an incredibly simple yet nice relaxing moment, just like a calm before the storm. However, just as wheat pushes its shoots up through the winter frost only to be stepped on again and again, we're going to learn that Gen's life is marked by constant challenges and repeated hardships which seem to never cease. The action begins during the month of April, the year 1945. The war has been ravaging Japan for a long time, at least its countryside, having thousands of deaths. The locals have gotten used to these common and frequently occurring attacks. Over the first 240 or so pages, we follow Gen's family as they struggle with a variety of hardships, including the father's political stances, which end up affecting the relationships with the rest of the people in their town. His father believes firmly that the two countries should be at peace, since Japan is a weaker force and has no place in this war, and instead should enjoy its period of prosperity and use it to grow. This pacifist anti-war stance places the family at odds with the prevailing militaristic society and ends with numerous consequences, including Gen and his brother being bullied and beaten up, called the sons of a traitor and more. Along the way to reaching page 247, we can feel a tangible threat arise as the page turns begin feeling heavier and heavier. Life oftentimes in the town is presented as being nice despite the attacks, bathing in a sense of serenity and nostalgia, much like what we've seen in Fused240's opening. As we advance with the pages, we can see that despite being amid these escalating challenges, Gen's family clings to optimism, as if it were the very air they breathe. Despite the daily adversities, the looming spectacle of nuclear devastation, the bitter realities of loss and the harsh conditions imposed by a society at war, they strive to maintain their humanity. However, that does not stop the bomb from dropping, and drop it does. In a moment that feels bleak, forsaken, abandoned, in an instant that should tear the very soul from this world, a blinding flash ignites the darkness. A sudden searing burst that shatters the silence. Almost immediately a resounding boom follows. Catastrophic roar that splits the air as if the heavens themselves have collapsed. Tiles and debris are hurled skyward, each fragment a testament to the destruction unleashed. Amidst the chaos, blowing smoke ascends like the mournful sigh of lost souls, swirling into the blood-red sky as the very foundations of buildings crumble. Under the relentless fury of a tornado of blazing fire, the structures that once sheltered life now fall in ruin, leaving behind only the bleak, desolate echoes of what was once a thriving world. Gen awakens under the rubble, confused. How much time has passed? Was it a day? Why is it dark? He tries to help a poor lady, but Her skin is falling down her face, and all around him, thousands of people with missing limbs, skin burned off, begin walking among the flattened ground. Thousands of beings left mutilated. I think their limbs would feel numb, and an overwhelming taste of iron must cover their mouths. Regardless of that, it's a terrifying scenario, one so intensely inhumane the very definition of it sickens me. Limbs falling over, skin peeling off the flesh as these people essentially became ant walkers, crawling out with just a few limbs or burned and charred beyond recognition, no sense of direction of where they were going. Much like the protagonist of Fused240. The light which engulfs him in the beginning carefully constructs this metaphor, which, if not thought out, happens to be a huge coincidence, one which cannot be overlooked, one powerful, strong, and above all else ravaging. We're left with a character which now relies on a metallic body, a singular limb, which he crawls, he eats, he moves with, a feeling of indescribable ruined, deserted, lonely dread. The protagonist pulls himself in the building, as we are greeted with an interior filled with rust, spilled cans and rust. An interior equally solitary, uninhabited, godforsaken, as it is foreboding. Rats run around the ground, and one of them even has a flashlight fused to its head, possibly hinting at the event that transpired. Even animals were affected by radiation after all. Compared to them, the settlers are vile creatures, yet their design are awfully familiar, he says. The settlers in this context could be, perhaps, the damsels, although I think they are the ones who occupy Earth. In some regard, I don't think they need to be seen to be understood. Oppressors. If the settlers are an analog for those who occupy and exploit, then their familiarity suggests that oppression does not come from the alien or the monstrous, but from something disturbingly close to home. Perhaps maybe even from humans themselves. And even if the attackers were alien, it still instills a lack of empathy and reminds us of the way people have suffered under the guise of the atomic bomb. We struggle to pick up a single can of food with our hand. The struggle to pick up basic nutrients shows his weakness, perhaps a loss of basic function, much like radiation poisoning weakens the body. The protagonist's inability to grasp something so simple speaks to the breakdown of the self and becomes this deeply personal function he carries. It saddens me watching this pathetic, barely moving and living being of an automation and flesh affected by a catastrophe beyond his comprehension. As we manage to finally insert it in the small hole the car robot has, we witness how the protagonist is force-fed through a tube the food, his body contorted into a small hole and burned all over. His eyes remain the only thing in sight, almost evoking of both medical treatment and forceful subjugation or mutilation scars. The way victims of nuclear radiation and fallout are often dehumanized either by their injuries or by the systems that caused them, to me builds a solid foundation for the metaphor of our protagonist being a nuclear fallout victim. That and the fact he is becoming more and more something he does not recognize as more time passes. He skirmishes as the food gets forcefully pumped. "Eating doesn't satiate me anymore," he says as he moans in pain. "When will it end? I can barely think. Why do we have to look like them? Am I going to be stuck here forever?" His last statement. We need to find the surgeon. We need to find the surgeon. Is the surgeon someone to put an end to his misery, or simply one that undoes the damage? Although it is far too late by this point. Crawling along a water canal, we meet another person stuck to a car. They have their entire upper body melted into the engine of a car, only its front visible as they crawl on their palms with a loud squeak. The man melted into the car is a perfect manifestation of nuclear horror. Bodies fused to metal, losing their human shape. The imagery invokes Hiroshima's shadow, the imprint of people left behind by atomic devastation, their forms permanently altered by the catastrophe. If it wasn't clear already, it feels like the image is getting clearer in some regard, but it presents one crucial deviation. The fact that he has managed to free himself before, only to nearly bleed out and become fused again, suggests that suffering is cyclical. Even if you manage to escape, you will be inevitably pulled back into the same fate. Our character seems to know this person. As they speak, they decide together to follow through and head for the surgeon together. The protagonist's desire to find the surgeon is almost like a lingering attachment to something, whether it be hope, despair, or a sense of self that is rapidly slipping away. We flash forward to an empty long hall, white lights on the left side as we progress across a pitch black room, watching the two talk as we slowly crawl forward. We learn that the protagonist is the only one who could check for birds outside, as they appear to be sealed off within the wheel of the respective car. The other person mentions that "You are armored, I'm exposed." The damsel bugs would snatch me immediately. The fact that the protagonist is the only one who can check for birds implies that the remaining rest of the world may have been stuck for the rest of the time inside, scared of getting snatched by the damsels. I wonder if the birds get eaten by these damsel bugs. They're clearly abnormally sized, if they can lift off an entire car's weight, or even a person. It's interesting that the choice was deliberately airborne here, birds and damsel bugs. Birds are often symbols of freedom, life, observation, making them a stark contrast to the character's decayed, fused state. They represent something just beyond reach, perhaps a reminder of what life was before the catastrophe, but I could say close to the same thing about the damsels. Not that they represent freedom, but that they remind of what life was before the catastrophe. If the protagonist is the only one who can check for them, what does that mean? They still have a lingering humanity, maybe? The only one who still smells and sees the sky and its colors? Or are they merely in denial of their transformation? I think the specific bug is important. Damsel is someone usually presented in distress, a young woman to be more exact. There's also more left underlying. Damselflies are first of all predatory instincts. Both nymphs and adults actively hunt and eat other insects, but also their presence on a body of water indicates that it is relatively unpolluted. But their dependence on fresh water makes them vulnerable to damage to their wetland habitats. A sort of purity presented through a twisted lens, a fragile but awful predator which pries at the remains of humanity. The conversation continues. Most birds remain unchanged. So birds remain unaffected by the catastrophic changes that have befallen people. According to a study published by the British Ecological Society, birds in the exclusion zone around Chernobyl are adapting to and may even be benefiting from long-term exposure to radiation, ecologists have found. The study is the first evidence that wild animals adapt to ionizing radiation, and the first to show that birds which produce most phelomelanin, a pigment in feathers, have greatest problems coping with radiation exposure. Again, drawing closer my conclusion that this big flash and the events that follow are simply a metaphor for nuclear fallout and its effects on human subjects. Do you think the settlers caused the flashes? The theory we crafted earlier about the fact the settlers might be the Damselflies seems to stray further away from us. But I think one detail out of their dialogue is important. First and foremost, when asked about the flash, our main character thinks that it was only one explosion, but the other person reveals soon enough that there were indeed several explosions, and two of them have been shown on the news, sort of mirroring the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Apart from that, the men who got more to live before being fused said the news organization were telling people to remain in close proximity to vehicles and seek shelter in their cars. Since people have already gotten fused to their cars, this advice appeared to be deceiving, similar to the way people of Chernobyl were misinformed and not given the full truth immediately after the reactor exploded back in 1986. They soon after continued their talk, but something strange is mentioned. This guy has been fused before to a different thing. He was first fused to a golf cart. Their conversation is interrupted by a morbid realization. Oh God, we're here. This is it. He begins hovering as a loud, hard machine whirls. pulling him up and forcefully splitting him from the car's engine. He asks us to join him as the machine splits him up, burning and destroying his mortal body, in an instant which feels both mortifying and powerful. A corpse shard lays on the ground, his guts spilled all over the place, the blood painting the surfaces red. We crawl closer to be picked up by the machine, but the machine refuses. Nothing changes. We continue to walk and realize nothing has happened. As we crawl to the end of the hallway, in a suicidal attempt to get carried away by the Damselflies, we crawl, each step painful and laden with sorrow. Towards the end, in an almost ironic manner, we fall down a hole. Our death wish brought to us, but in a mockery of the spirit, not allowed to run into the sun and burn our wings like Icarus. Forever stuck, unable to free ourselves in a tiny claustrophobic space. Memories of the past flood our mind one last time. Soulless, lifeless, hollow-hearted void, meaningless, apathetic, numb, depressed, like the memory of mid-morning toward the end of summer. Head swimming in the garden's perfume after a quick surprise rain. The journey comes to an end. The surgeon has failed to save us. One last statement remains, and we perish like many of the victims of nuclear events, left to rot in holes, forgotten, immobile in craters at the edge of a wasteland, left to wander in despair. What a cruel world.